Welcome, friends. My name is Silas Ollegario, and I'm the host of Think Onward, a podcast about books, studies, productivity, and lifestyle now, after the intro. Hi again and welcome, people. Welcome. This is episode 1 of Think Onward. And if you're here, that must mean you've listened to episode 0 already. In case you haven't, please do it after you listen to this one. One thing that I failed to say last week, on this podcast, we will have some of my friends over, okay? People who will enlighten us in many different topics from very different professions. Just as examples, doctors, musicians, artists, engineers, nutritionists, students, even teenagers. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm a believer that we all have something to share, so you don't have to be a specialist in order to talk about a subject. Of course, it is great listening to people who are at the top of their respective fields, lecturing about what they work, do, and study. But it is also nice having a conversation with individuals who are in the same journey of discovering what is what. So again, I do hope you help us and stay with us for this ride. Okay, on last episode, which was an introduction of what you may all expect from this project, my wife Rebecca and I talked a little about some of the things we enjoy chatting about. Books is a topic I'm incredibly passionate about. Oh my God, I'm saying the word about a lot, excuse me. Books is a topic I'm incredibly passionate towards, okay? I wasn't like this when I was a young teenager, but it was in my teens that I discovered how reading can be life-changing. And with that being said, today is going to be another short episode. The reason is that I am by myself, and until I have you all engaged, I don't think spending too long talking alone is something very pleasing for you all. My intention is to bring joy, entertainment, and valuable content. At least a content valuable in my understanding. Okay, you guys ready? Fasten your seatbelts and let's go. I'd like to start by saying one thing. Reading can be pleasuring, okay? Reading can definitely be pleasuring. However, not knowing what to read and when might be overwhelming for the majority of us. That's the reason I do what I am about to show you. Every December, maybe beginning of January, I decide the books I intend to read. Not for the month, but for the entire year. It may take some time, but trust me, you'll be glad you did it. Okay. In my case, I prepare a list separated in 4 different categories: fun, life, soul, and school. Why these specific categories, you may ask? Just because they fit my personal style of reading. And what I mean by that is that the books which I like reading more can easily be separated into these 4 categories. So my first suggestion is think and write down what kind of books you enjoy. If you're starting your journey in reading, the question you could ask yourself is, what kind of stories do I like to listen? What kind of stories do I like to watch or talk about? After you do it, you'll see how many ways you can separate those stories into. For instance, I will now go through my 2021 list of books. I like to start with fun books, or at least books that make me enjoy their stories. Just one thing. I have to read the list, okay? There's no way you can memorize this entire list. All right, fun. This year, I decided that the list of fun books would be read a new list. Okay, what I mean is that all these books I've already read years ago. But they are books I like, and for the same reason, I love these authors. I've started and finished the first book of the list, which is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. That's right. Harry Potter is my second favorite series of books. And in 2020, I read the first 2 books. So for this year, I decided to read the rest of the series. So The Prisoner of Azkaban finished last Monday. The Goblet of Fire, The Order of the Phoenix, The Half-Blood Prince, The Deathly Hallows, and The Cursed Child, which is the only one I haven't read yet. They were all written by J.K. Rowling. Let me tell you something about the Harry Potter series. For some reason, people like to say they dislike something even before they can understand why. Harry Potter was a story made for kids and teenagers, absolutely. And I was a teenager when the movies came out. To be more specific, I was Harry's age throughout the entire series. As it turned out, even though it was written for young people, the story is very compelling to adults as well. I mean, come on. Harry Potter is the fifth most read series of books in history. That's huge. Especially if you consider that the first and second most read books in history are the Quran and the Bible, which makes sense, right? After those two, quotations from Chairman Mao Zedong, Don Quixote, and then the Harry Potter series. So that's just amazing. Anyhow, continuing. I also have on my list for 2021 the entire Game of Thrones series from George R. Martin, one of my favorite authors, maybe the fifth on my personal list. Okay, A Game of Thrones, A Clash of Kings, A Song of Swords, A Feast for Crows, A Dance with Dragons. And the one that has not been launched yet, The Winds of Winter. I'm so excited about these books, especially now that the TV series has ended and somewhere in the middle, maybe around season 4 or 5, got completely different from the books. I got to read it again and enjoy this story once more. And the last fun book I intend to read is The Hobbit. This book is another masterpiece from a genius. That's right, J.R.R. Tolkien was a genius. And if you disagree, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. Yeah, that's how much I love him. The Lord of the Rings was the first big book I've read in my life. The Fellowship of the Ring, to be more specific. It has a special place in my heart, that's for sure. So I believe that I'll be reading this book around next December. Okay, page 2. Life. Life is a category of books that may add a little bit more of value to my life in terms of general ideas and behavior. I put in here books like The Power of Habit from Charles Duhigg. Great book, read in 2017 maybe. It's a great one. I absolutely advise you all to read it. It's on my list again because now I'll write down most of the things he says in the book. Then from Daniel Power, 4 books: Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, Emotional Intelligence for Leadership, Empathy Healing, and How to Analyze People. I don't know what to expect from these books because I've never read this author, but that's it. Before the soul list, I'd like to point out one thing. I have space on my list, okay? What it means is that I set the amount of books I want to read, considering how big or small they are, but I like to leave space on my list, and the reason is simple. There's always a book that I wasn't expecting to come out, or a book recommended by a friend who suddenly became available on Kindle Unlimited and I can read it for free. So these books, in my experience, need to go into the list as soon as your decision to read them is made, okay? All right, so the first author I have here is Judah Smith. Judah Smith is a pastor from Church Home in Seattle, also in LA, in Las Vegas, in many places. And I absolutely love his preaching and the way he talks about God, Jesus, and life. As a Christian myself, I tend to read these spiritual books from my personal perspective, which is books written by people who share the same faith as me. However, that does not mean I agree with all the authors or with all the books I read. I just think it's important to read and to be more and more aware of different points of view under the same standards, you know. So from Judas Smith, three books: Jesus is, Life is, and How is Your Soul. These are books which I have high expectations because some of my friends have read them all and they were all well recommended books. I also have two books from Andy Stanley, Astonished by God and Next Generation Leader. From Bishop T.D. Jakes, the books Crushing and Store. From the pastor of VU Church in Miami, Pastor Rich Wilkerson Jr. Friend of Sinners, from Pastor Stephen Furtick, now Elevation Church. 7 Mile Miracle, and from a very impressive man, Francis Chan, a famous book which for some reason I have never read, Crazy Love. And last but not least, the pastor who is a reference all around the world, Pastor John Piper, the book Desiring God. These are the books in my soul list. Okay, now for school. In case you didn't listen to episode 0, or did but wasn't paying much attention, I am a pre-med student at Mount Royal University, and I have books and authors suggested by one professor I had last term, an English professor, Dr. Murray Pagler. He said throughout the entire term the importance of reading well, typing fast, and having background. So every time an essay needs to be written, we all have something to put on paper more than I think just because, So 6 books on this list. One was the first book I read in 2021. You can expect a podcast about this book very soon, okay? Mahatma Gandhi. There's no author, at least not a single one. I mean, it was written by a group of historians. I will be talking and explaining in the future, but not today. From Arthur Conan Doyle. By the name, you may guess which book. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I'm actually curious, about this book. I love the movies with Robert Downey Jr. From Alan Moore, V for Vendetta. Again, really nice movie. I imagine the book will be just as good. One thing, I don't really compare books to movies because I think writing for a screenplay is different than writing for people who will only read the story, Cinema and books are different expressions of art, I think. So comparing each with one another is like comparing bikes and cars. At least that's how I see. I just mentioned because of the suggestion I said in the beginning. If it's a kind of story I enjoyed watching, I might as well enjoy the reading, makes sense. From the great Agatha Christie, the book And Then There Were None. Never read this book, but I love her writing. Also from Jane Austen, the book Sense and Sensibility. Yeah. And at last, my third favorite author, unfortunately died pretty young, Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton may be indirectly one of the responsible for my love towards medicine. He was the one who created the TV series ER. If you're too young to know what I'm talking about, ER was a medical series from the 90s. It went on until maybe 2006, 2005 or 2006. Amazing success in 15 seasons. He also wrote 2 other famous stories. He wrote the movie Twister, and he also wrote a book which inspired Steven Spielberg's movie Jurassic Park. So he was amazing. The book I have here on my list is Grave Descent. Have no idea what is it about, but I like him so. And that's it. That's the list. There are 35 books on my list, and my goal for 2021 is 50. I have never got to the 50 mark. I got to 41 once and 39 last year, but 50 is a mark I would really love to get. Guys, that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your company. Thank you for staying with me for 15 minutes. Oh my God. I hope you really like the idea of creating the list. I hope I may have said something, one thing or two, that you can put into practice right away. And I also hope you have an amazing week. Remember to stay active, productive, and intentional. And also remember to think onward. Have a good one.